Joining us now is the terrific Matt Gaetz, who will be joining us at the Turning Point Action Conference, tpaction.com. The administrative state and the DOJ was threatening Matt Gaetz with prison for a year and a half, 2 years. Matt Gaetz never backed down. And Matt Gaetz had an opportunity to face down the Leviathan yesterday. I want to play this cut, and we'll welcome Matt Gaetz. Play cut 66.
I'm sitting here with my father. I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction. I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father. Sounds like a shakedown, doesn't it, Director?
I'm not going to get into commenting on that.
You seem deeply uncurious about it, don't you? Almost suspiciously uncurious. Are you protecting the Bidens?
Absolutely not. The FBI does not and has no interest in
you won't answer the question about whether or not that's a shakedown, and everybody knows why you won't answer it.
Matt Gaetz, your reaction and your response to Christopher Wray.
Get interestingly dumb on the questions that we ask them. They forget things, or they don't have things at their disposal. And here I wanted to showcase to the country that Christopher Wray's unwillingness to acknowledge an obvious shakedown in front of the entire country is reflective of what we see at the FBI. They target conservatives. They go after President Trump and anyone who supports him. And then when there's derogatory information that comes in from reliable sources that have helped build dozens of other cases for the FBI, well, they just label all of that foreign interference so that they can continue with the grift. And so the real question, Charlie, is where do we go from here? After we expose the bias and the political capture that's occurred at the FBI, we can't just continue business as usual. That's why in the appropriations process that is coming up in a matter of weeks, we have to take a hatchet to the FBI budget and to the FBI authorities that have been weaponized against the people. Like, the Bidens are one thing, but it's the rest of us that they're still coming for. In the period of time that the Inspector General looked at the FBI's surveillance authorities, they were conducting 38 illegal queries every hour. And a judge who reviewed their conduct was particularly aggrieved that they were doing weird personal things like looking up themselves and their ex-lovers in the process. This is not an FBI anymore that singularly investigates crimes and holds people accountable. They've become the enforcement wing of the Democratic Party politically, and then they've just become unconstitutionally nosy with authorities that we have to constrain under the law.
So, Matt, our audience is upset, and they should be. What, if anything, can we do to rein this in? Because, I watched the Christopher Wray hearings. He does not feel as if he is accountable to anyone, and certainly not to you. He doesn't have to answer Congress's questions. He doesn't believe that there's a check and balance on his power. He believes he is superior. It's as if a monarch, a divine right of king oligarch, would come down to the peasants and hear questions at some sort of community meeting, all the while having the power of the Praetorian Guard and secret police to put every single one of them in jail. How do we reset constitutional structure and form, Matt? Is it possible? What is the way forward?
Well, you're right, and our viewers are right here, that there's an arrogance to the tone of Christopher Wray that predominates the entire energy of these exchanges. One thing we have to do is cut off the money, because what we've already seen is you can pass all the laws you want, they'll just break them, and they'll do it with impunity, it seems. And so you have to starve them of the resources that they use to hurt people. That is number one. I would go further. I would explicitly target Director Wray and some of the bureaucrats who've done the most egregious things, and I would zero out their salaries. One of the things we fought for in January was a specific rule that allows us to zero out specific bureaucrat salaries. If we don't use that rule regarding the people at the FBI, then that was an unserious endeavor because they deeply deserve it. But I think there's also a potential criminal referral here for Wray to the Department of Justice, which they will, of course, ignore, but I think that highlights the hypocrisy ever more. Christopher Wray said that the FBI never investigated parent speech at school board meetings. That was a lie. We had FBI whistleblower Steve Friend give sworn testimony before the committee that he was taken off of child porn cases and exploitation cases, and he was moved to go to a parking lot at a school board meeting and record people's license plate information so that that could be cross-referenced with other databases. Steve Friend, that FBI agent, had previously gone to school board meetings as a parent to express concerns about curriculum, and so he can give that testimony. I think that Director Wray was not honest with us. He also wasn't honest with Senator Lee several years ago when he said that there was none of the FISA spying authority used against people who were in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. A federal judge issued an order essentially saying that that was a lie. So we have repeated lies. If we don't enforce the powers of contempt, if we don't send referrals, even though we know what Merrick Garland will do with them, then we are not protecting our Article I powers in the Constitution as the United States Congress. So those are some forward-looking, very aggressive approaches, but I think that the times we're living in and what we're seeing would call for them to be utilized.
I'm going to just play a piece of tape here to reiterate the point. I'm going to play 85 again, play cut 85.
Can't remember the dates. Again, I just can't speak to that here. I'm not an expert. I'm not sure yet. I would really have to see more closely. I'm not sure that I can give you that number. I can't get into. I'm not aware of any such evidence. I'm not going to speak to that. I'll decline to comment further. I will work with the department to make sure we can figure out what information we can provide. Again, I'm not going to get into that here. Well, again, I don't want to speculate about. I can't speak to the specifics.
Yeah, that's a new one, Matt. You know, we should tell the next time the Democrats take the House, anytime they subpoena people on, Team America Conservative, we should just tell them to do I'm not going to speak to that. Could you imagine under subpoena, you just tell a member of that's called you go to jail if you're Steve Bannon and you say, I'm not going to speak to that, Matt Gaetz.
Yeah, there's some selective amnesia there that's pretty apparent. But the one data point that Christopher Wray knew with particularity is he had some comeback to me where he said, well, Mr. Gaetz, all your criticisms of the FBI are not well-founded because we've seen a big increase in recruiting in the state of Florida. Now, Charlie, you and I both know there are a lot of patriotic Americans that would like to serve in the FBI because they want to fix it. They want it to be better. They want it to be what we originally intended as the premier law enforcement entity in our country, not a political operation. So it's funny that, like, when you ask Director Wray, how many times has the FISA law been violated while you've been director? Well, he has no idea about those numbers. But then when he thinks it's something to jam me on a rhetorical point, he's got a memory that is quite lucid. So I think that the country saw the absurdity of that.
So, Matt, can you walk us through, are you going to lead a coalition to defund the FBI? And what's the likelihood Republicans will go alongside with you? I mean, I think you got to force a vote. Put every Republican on the record, including leadership. Will you defund the Federal Bureau of Investigation? Matt Gaetz.
We should defund major portions of it. Obviously, there's crime-fighting stuff that's outside of Washington, D.C. that we would want to maintain in some form. But this iteration of the FBI we have now is like a bad dog that's been turned against its owner. And sometimes you've got to put them down, however challenging that may be. I am concerned about the support of some of my fellow Republicans. I've had Republicans say that they will not support reducing the FBI's budget by $1 because they think that they could get attacked for defunding the police. Those Republicans are wrong. They are misguided. And based on the votes we're going to force, they'll be exposed. And I hope that we're able to persuade them to take a different viewpoint before that vote occurs.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, what is the likelihood is what? I mean, low is what you're basically telling me. The likelihood is low that the House Republicans will defund this secret police, the Stasi, run by Christopher Wray.
Well, they may be slightly higher after yesterday because some of the Republicans who were FBI defenders had to watch Christopher Wray in these absurd exchanges where he was, like you said, on his high horse when responding to Congress. So again, it's a work in progress. There's work to be done. I would encourage all of your viewers and listeners to share their perspective on FBI and Department of Justice funding with our senators, with their members of Congress. We are in divided government, and so it's not as if what Matt Gaetz says goes every time, but I'm working to build that coalition. I want to put political pressure on the entire Republican conference to join me in this effort. And if we're not willing to take resources away from this corrupt entity, what are we even doing here?
I don't know. I mean, we got this national defense authorization thing coming up, Matt. If there is ever a time to shut down the government, this is the time to shut down the government, if you ask me. Just shut it down.
Hey, there's a lot of good in that bill, Charlie. Getting
Matt
rid
Gaetz,
of
you're doing excellent work.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of good in that bill, too, so we'll have to come back sometime and chat about it.
Matt, you're going to be here at our Turning Point Action Conference. Let's have you on for a deeper discussion. They try to put you in jail. You never backed down, and now you still are confronting the administrative state. Matt Gaetz is a courageous man. We had hundreds of Matt Gaetz in D.C. The country turns around. It's that simple. Matt, keep it up. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Charlie. Look forward to seeing you in Palm Beach. It's going to be a great time.